is back this weekend with Final Destination Bloodlines, so it's time to stop and rank all 6 Final Destination films from the worst to the best. Hi, my name is Sean, and I love to talk about movies and TV way too much. With that in mind, go ahead and join me down below in the comment section. Share your ranking of all 6 Final Destination films. My list is not the right list, it's just my list, and I would love to see yours. And let's get started. In last, The Final Destination. And this is a pretty bad movie, but it's still a pretty watchable bad movie, where it is not trying to do anything new with the concept, the plot. It is just trying to deliver the most base level of entertainment value. And in doing so, it does provide a total schlockfest of just, is it entertaining to watch people being squished and gore spraying at the camera? Sure, if you're into that sort of thing. If you just want some carnage candy, this movie delivers a lot of it. And as a 3D film, it leans so hard into looking for the most ridiculous ways to have things dangling right in front of the camera in 3D, have guts spray out and wiggle in 3D right in front of the camera. And while it doesn't have the same effect when you're watching at home without your 3D glasses and 3D tech, it's just going for the lowest common denominator of entertainment value. Shock value, over-the-top gore, boobs, and juvenile humor. It sucked his guts out of his butt. There is somewhat of a I'm just laughing at the movie aspect when there's bad 3D effects that aren't in 3D wiggling right in front of on your TV screen. But by this point in time, it's basically turned into a live-action itchy and scratchy cartoon of just looking for these caveman ways to just squish people, kill people, decapitate people, suck out their guts from the vacuum in a pool. It's just so blunt and direct. The wit of the first couple films, the elaborate cause and effect, all that stuff seems to have mostly disappeared, and we're just showing gore and carnage. At times, it's like Sharknado level of over-the-top kills with really bad effects, compounded by 3D that very few of us are able to see on our TV screens. As I mentioned before, there's no greater plot here. This is rinse and repeat. Someone has a premonition, saves people from a accident, and we're trying to save everybody as we figure out the rules. It is exactly the same plot, just with schlockier kills, and the characters are weaker and more annoying than ever. Totally leaning into the horror cliche of make your characters really unlikable and people don't feel bad when they die. Well, it really goes for that with this movie. We literally kick it off with a racist KKK member that uses the N-word and tries to burn a cross in a person's front yard. And you go, oh, come on now, you have not earned that level of let's lean into racism and touch on really dark subject matter in this movie. And of course, the way he dies, he's dragged behind a car while the radio blasts, "Why can't we be friends?" Just like, what are we doing with this movie? It is not good, but it's also not boring. Next up, Final Destination 3. And in a lot of ways, this is probably the most forgettable film in the franchise to me, where 4 is memorable for being so bad and ridiculous. It's memorable for that. And this one is a much better made movie, but it has that similar feeling of just being a rinse and repeat sequel where things are getting a little bit too cartoonish and over the top for me. There's a couple clever kills in here. The tanning bed in particular is one that's memorable for a variety of reasons. Roller coaster is pretty wild and crazy, so it sticks with you. But, the only thing here that really elevated the film for me was having Mary Elizabeth Winstead in the lead role. So you have someone that kind of has a screen presence. You care about her. She's fun to watch on screen. She's not just kind of like a throwaway actress that stars in some of these movies. It's that in particular kind of worked a little bit better, but adding rules in about pictures predicting where people die and stuff like that, none of that really worked for me. It didn't really enhance the lore. It was just, what's a new gimmick that we can throw in so we have a new way to try and figure out what Death's plan is and try and work around it. But it just felt like kind of like one of the lazier ways to add a little bit of a new ingredient into it while still sticking to the exact same formula as the previous films. So once again, entirely watchable. There's a lot of fun to be had here, but it doesn't stick out or pop for me. In fourth, Final Destination 2, as this is a direct follow-up to the original with a character carrying over from one movie to the other. This is the one that has a tone most similar to the first film, and in most ways, I really appreciate that because it was still kept this somber tone. You took it seriously, where as the franchise went along and it leaned more and more into comedy, it undercut the tension a little bit too often because of that. I think the log truck opening to this film is pretty easily the most iconic of the Final Destination opening sequences, because you talk to anyone that's about my age and we will say that we're terrified of driving behind log trucks because of the opening to this film. And when a sequence in a movie can create paranoia in an entire generation, you have done your job properly. And as that's one of the things that this franchise is kind of good at, of making you nervous about the little things all around you in life. And this is the movie with, I think, the sequence that best did that. You got to give it a lot of credit. But beyond kind of having that tone more similar to the first film, as well as the log truck sequence, I think that this one is kind of lacking in a number of other ways, where it kind of established the rehash, rinse and repeat. We're following the same formula as pretty much all the sequels until the new one have done, except with a less interesting set of characters. That the actors in the first movie, they got a really good batch of them, where even like people that are dispatched pretty early on are played by like Sean William Scott, things like that. And that's just not the case here. I don't care about the characters, the actors nearly as much. And they're like, let's make it clever. This time, Death is working in reverse. That's not actually a particularly compelling or interesting spin on things. It's like, okay, whatever, I don't really care. And while generally speaking, it has a more somber and serious tone, it does just enough of the over-the-top violence humor to just make it a little bit awkward. So there's like a bit where, a teenage boy is blown up, and then for comic effect, an arm falls right in front of his mom. And does it get a laugh? Yeah. Does it create a weird tone because we're doing Looney Tunes violence humor with like somber death? So there's a few things about it that just don't work quite as well to me. That if I want serious Final Destination, I'll go for the first one. If I want just total schlockfest, I'll go for some of the other ones. But overall, there are a lot of good elements in here. Real quick before I give you my top 3, remember to join me down below in the comment section. Share your ranking of the Final Destination films. Also, if you're a fan of horror movies, I've ranked almost every single one of the major horror franchises. If you like slashers, we've got Scream, Halloween, Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street. If you want exorcism stuff, I've done Exorcist, I've done Conjuring, and all the other stuff as well. You can check that out somewhere around here when we're done. In third, Final Destination 5. And to me, this was a nice return to form after getting a little bit too goofy and over the top with the previous 2 movies. This kind of kept some of the shock value humor. There's some over the top gore, but it also brought back a bit more of the wit, the intelligence, and the edge of your seat thrills that was missing from the middle portion of this franchise. So right out of the gate, one of the things I appreciated about the film is that they made the characters we're following just a little bit older, to where they're working professionals, and inherently they're less annoying than high schoolers, college kids that just have a bratty energy to them and trying to figure things out. I think incorporating the idea of death once a life. So will you give death a life? Will you kill someone to save your own life? Of the little mechanisms they've thrown in to try and change up the formula a little bit, that adds a moral dilemma to it, a complexity to it that's a bit more interesting, that I just enjoyed that about the film. And just in general, felt better crafted. Just a movie that wasn't going to the lowest common denominator, wasn't relying on naked people and guts flying at the screen. It's like we're trying to actually bring something to the franchise once again. And of course, the ultimate example of that was finding a real unexpected way to tie it into the original film. And so it ends and you're like, oh, cool. There's actually some continuity here tying things together. And like I said, wit. It felt like it had its intelligence back. I think it still has, some of the faults of the previous two of just, we're getting too silly with our kills at times, but at least we're doing it with intelligence. Our runner-up, Final Destination, and this movie is built on two great concepts that came from a couple of the top writers from The X-Files. And essentially, you've got this idea that what if people cheated death? How would death respond? Creating this ominous villain of death chasing a group of people with a set of rules for how that works. That's a really fun central concept for a horror franchise. But the other great idea in here is the way the deaths are done, kind of these Rube Goldberg cause and effect deaths, where death enters a sequence and starts manipulating small little things to create a series of events that kill someone in a clever and creative way. And in this one in particular, death has a bit more of a personality of kind of like sneaking in and kind of retracting at times to hide what it did. And it just makes for just a concept where you watch it, and when you see it the first time, you want to go tell people about it. It's like, oh, it's just like unlike any movie like this I've seen before, with death itself is out to get people in clever and creative ways. Other thing in here that kind of elevates it is that the whole cast is like kind of better than it should be, where there's a number of people they cast that hadn't broken through. They hadn't really exploded in popularity yet when they were cast, and like Sean William Scott in particular, it's almost weird how little he's in the movie in light of American Pie having just come out. But that's kind of the luck of the casting here, that they got a lot of really good people, and Ali Lauder's in here, of course Tony Todd bringing a little bit of horror legacy and prestige into the film. But it just kind of takes characters that on paper might not have been that interesting and breathes some life into them in unexpected ways. Now, when it comes to the actual script of itself, beyond the great concept in the casting of it, I don't know that it cuts through and is that compelling in the specific way that it uses the premise. I don't have a ton of like nostalgia for this film. It's like, oh, that's a really cool concept for a franchise, and there's some great memorable kills. The movie in and of itself, I think is solid. It's good. It's not as great as the central concept itself. That's why, to me, it's not in that number one spot. It's like a great kickoff, but not in and of itself the greatest possible execution of its central premise. But coming in at number one, Bloodlines. As I just said, I don't have any particular nostalgia for any of the previous Final Destination films. None of them as an individual film was this big memorable experience or a formative horror film for me. So if you have deeper ties to the franchise, real connections to one of the movies, almost certainly I can easily imagine why you'd have a different movie at number one for you. But as someone that just kind of enjoys the concept of the franchise more than any individual film in the franchise, for me, this was the most well-rounded package, where It's the only sequel where I feel they actually did something different with the premise. They all kind of have that rinse and repeat, follow the exact same template. And this one, it follows the same rules. It has premonitions, avoiding death and death chasing people down. But it actually takes that idea and plays it out over a grander period of time with a lot more people. And like, what would death have to do? And just inherently right there, it feels bigger in scope and size. But also, it breaks the formula a little bit. It changes the formula around. It's not just so clear, rinse and repeat the same exact thing. Likewise, showing an event decades in the past has more scale to it, size to it. You care more about the characters. It's designed to be a character piece about a broken family coming together. And so you care about the individuals, but you also care about the family dynamics and their bloodlines. That worked for me, building out the lore in a way that we figure out more about William Bloodworth and his origin story. I liked that. It stands on its own, but also ties things together in an interesting way. When it comes to the kills themselves, I think we're getting back to kind of that wit and a creativity to them, where it's almost like a mystery of like, what is death up to? And it gives you red herrings and you're paying attention to things. It plays around with the concept of the bloodlines and the order and death is going. It subverts expectations a number of times in ways that you don't see coming. So it just has that wit once again to it, both in the overall concept of playing out the concept of bloodlines, as well as the idea of how individual sequences are set up. Like the one with the garbage truck, the way that's set up, both as it does it as a punchline to a joke, but as well as this horrifying nightmare that plays out in unexpected, subversive ways that can be funny and true. We set up a joke, but we also set up a kill. We also set up a twist in the story, all at once. That's when I say when it's witty, when I think it just works on a couple of levels beyond the other movies. That's, for me, why it's number one. And then I think there is a little bit, too. It's able to have more emotional depth than any of the other movies, both because it makes you care about the characters in the family line, but because it is Tony Todd's final appearance. And it seems like he probably knew that he was about to die when he made the movie. And his lines of dialogues play as him saying goodbye to his fans and giving them a final charge. And you don't normally go into a Final Destination movie expecting to get emotional or having a poignant moment, but you get that in this film. So for me, it has the great central concept. It does creative cause and effect kills. You care more about the characters. It can be funny without undercutting it. It's not just cartoonish like, 4 is. It has humor that it feels more like there's actual jokes being made with the characters and creativity. And it has a certain emotionality to it because of Tony Todd and the subject matter at hand. So for me, it's the best overall film, so it comes in at number one. If you enjoyed this video, I've got a ton more horror rankings just like it. You can check them out in that playlist right over there. If you love horror franchises, there's definitely something over there that you will enjoy. Thanks so much for watching, and keep talking movies and TV.